Be it the thriving J-pop scene, the country's anime obsession, or even just the different cuisine and customs, Japan truly is a culture shock for those who visit from abroad. And so today we're taking a look at 15 weird things that only exist in Japan. Number 15. Robot Restaurant. Now we know you've probably heard that robots are the future many times before. However, in Japan, life-size robots can really be a thing of the present. That's because in the capital city of Tokyo, you can visit Robot Restaurant, which stands apart due to it offering a true one-of-a-kind experience. That's because not only are you served by robots, but perhaps more impressively, you get to experience a sensory overload of acrobats, dancers, musicians, and massive machines dancing and singing in a multicolored, shining, and loud environment. And while this attraction may seem a little strange to many, it certainly is a must-see the next time you're in Japan. Number 14. The Nucky Sumo Baby Crying Contest. Although most parents try to get their babies not to cry while in public, the Nucky Sumo Baby Crying Contest turns this concept on its head. That's because this contest, which takes place at the Sensoji Temple in Tokyo every year in April, is essentially an event where sumo wrestlers will bring a baby on stage and try to make it cry as quickly and as loudly as possible. These sumo wrestlers are often ruthless in their tactics, generally using demon masks and shouting in the baby's faces in order to induce a negative reaction. Now, this tradition exists in the first place because it supposedly both helps to make the baby fat and scares away any demons that could be hiding inside of it. And while this hasn't been proven as of yet, it certainly makes for an interesting event. Number 13. Teal Traffic Lights. Now, generally speaking, every country in the world has to abide by international traffic laws, and those laws state that all traffic lights have to have a red, yellow, and green light. And while this may be simple enough, when this ruling was communicated to Japan, they didn't exactly get the memo. That's because thanks to the word "eo," meaning both blue and green in Old Japanese, what were supposed to be green lights were instead manufactured in blue. Now, unsurprisingly, Japan got into hot water for making this error, yet they refused to fully correct it. Instead, they compromised by making their traffic lights teal, which is a tinted bluish-green color, in order to abide by these international regulations. As a result, their traffic lights have remained strangely colored to this day. Number 12. Train delays make national headlines. When it comes to typical commuter trains, they generally leave a lot to be desired for in the West. That's because, like any mode of public transportation, they're prone to being late, with this often frustrating commuters who are trying to get to home, work, or school. However, in Japan, this typically isn't the case, as their high-speed train system is one of the most punctual in the world. In fact, it is so punctual that if a train is just 5 minutes late, the railway company will often issue official delay certificates. And if it's an hour late, the incident will easily make national headlines. As a result, if you want to live somewhere where commuting is as smooth as humanly possible, then Tokyo may just be the place to relocate to. Number 11. Bathroom slippers. In many homes, it's not all that uncommon to put on slippers after coming through the front door. After all, the outside world isn't exactly all that sanitary, and ensuring that your sweaty feet get encompassed by some slippers ensures that the floors within the house stay squeaky clean. However, in Japan, many people take this one step further by having designated toilet slippers for when you do your business. Interestingly enough, this practice is largely rooted in the emphasis on purity by the popular Shinto religion, and given that bathrooms tend to be on the dirty side, these slippers really do make practical sense. However, in order not to defeat the purpose of wearing them, it is always advisable to make sure that you take them off and switch into your regular slippers once you're finished in the bathroom. Number 10. Inemuri. In most Western workplaces, if you were to sleep on the job, your boss wouldn't be all that happy. After all, if you're getting paid by the hour, then napping at work would mean that your boss would be paying you for your midday siesta, which in most cases would lead to you either getting disciplined or fired. However, in Japan, they view dozing off at work in an entirely different light. You see, the work culture there is very different. After all, the Japanese generally pride themselves on being hardworking, and as such may take on 10 to 12-hour workdays in order to be as productive as possible. However, all of this overtime has a toll on one's body, thus making a Japanese worker more likely to, and arguably more deserving of, the luxury of taking a quick nap while at work, on the subway, or in an airport. Yet while this would be frowned upon in the West, the typical busy lifestyle of a Japanese worker has created a cultural perception that sleeping on the job is the result of hard work, and that sleeping in class is the result of studying hard the night before. As a result, it's often tolerated or even encouraged by employers, as they know that once their worker gets in a few Z's, they will get right back to being as productive as possible. Number 9. Japanese ice cream. Let's face it, we all scream for ice cream, and it can be a vanilla and chocolate soft serve swirl, or some scoops of mint chocolate and cookie dough in a nice cone. Ice cream has become an iconic icy treat in the West. As such, you'll be excited to know that you can get your ice cream fix in Japan as well. However, don't expect to see the flavors you'd typically see back home. That's because while the classics certainly are an option, many Japanese ice cream shops have some more inventive flavors that are anything but ordinary. Now, there are some that, while a little odd, really seem like they have some potential. After all, we think it would definitely be cool to experience the sweet and spicy sensation of wasabi ice cream. And we're sure that seaweed ice cream can't be all that bad. However, where many Westerners draw the line is with the various meat-flavored ice creams that are often available. That's because, be it raw horse meat, beef tongue, python, or chicken-flavored ice cream, these savory offerings are a little offsetting to the majority of foreigners. Yet if you're the type that likes to try new things, then perhaps give these outlandish flavors a shot next time you're in the country. We're constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button. Number 8. Cube-shaped watermelons. While most consumers in the West are used to buying watermelon in its regular oval-shaped form, cube-shaped watermelons have become increasingly popular over the years. First developed in 1978 by graphic designer Tomoyuki Ono, the original idea was that the cube shape would prevent these watermelons from rolling, thus allowing them to be more easily fitted into a fridge. However, farmers soon found that creating these specially shaped watermelons was a challenge, as they had to be grown in molds and monitored to ensure that they didn't develop asymmetrical stripes or cracks. As a result, most go for about $100 a piece, with some that are near perfectly shaped even being sold in the $200 range. And while new forms such as hearts and pyramids have now been introduced, the unfortunate truth is that these watermelons rarely taste as good as they look, as they often have to be harvested while unripe in order to maintain their perfect shape. Yet if you're the type that would like to have a novelty fruit to show off to your friends and family, then perhaps these oddities may be right up your alley. Number 7. Cuddle cafes. Let's face it, there's not a single one of you out there who doesn't like cuddling with their significant other every now and then. Yet while cuddling is typically reserved for the couples in the West, Japan has begun to sell these experiences to those who are on the lonelier side for a fee. Now, to be clear, these cafes have a strict rule that no funny business is allowed, and instead offer a menu of rather strange options to satisfy their customers' desires. These options include anything from a quick 20-minute nap to a full 10-hour snooze fest, and go for the equivalent of about $55 to $60 per hour. What's more, if you'd like to choose the girl you sleep with, you can expect to pay an additional $5 to $10 an hour. But if you're willing to splurge another $10 to $20, you can get some truly odd add-ons. These include features such as staring at the girl for 1 minute, getting patted on the head for 3 minutes, and if you are so inclined, watching the girl change clothes. And while there are certainly some men and women that go for this type of service, it goes without saying that it would be seen as super strange in anywhere other than Japan. Number 6. KFC for Christmas. While Christmas may be a popular holiday in the West, for many years this was not the case in Japan. That's because only about 1% of the country's population is Christian, thus making the holiday rather obscure. However, in the 1970s, KFC began an advertising campaign known as Kentucky for Christmas, which essentially offered large chicken-filled dinner specials around Christmas time. This filled the country's Christmasless void by giving Japanese people a quick, easy, and tasty way to meet up with friends and family during what is considered by much of the world as the holiday season. As a result, around Christmas time, about 3.6 million Japanese families choose to eat chicken made by the Colonel, and it is typical to have to call in weeks in advance to pre-order a Christmas bucket, lest you'd like to stand in lines for hours on end. This ultimately means that December is often 10 times busier for KFC than any other time of year, with earning reports showing that Japan's KFC restaurants make approximately 1/3 of their revenue in this month alone. As a result, this Japanese tradition, which entirely owes itself to globalization, is easily one of the stranger things to witness if you're in Japan during the holiday season. Number 5. Capsule Hotels. Typically, when you walk into a hotel, you'd expect to walk into a room with a closet, comfy bed, warm shower, and if you paid a little extra, perhaps even a balcony. However, in Japan, there exists a more minimalist option for those who are looking to save a quick buck and have fun while doing it. Known as capsule hotels, these are essentially dormitory-like rooms where futuristic pods will be stacked on top of one another in order to fit as many people as possible. Now, each pod generally only has enough room to accommodate someone either lying down or, if you're lucky, sitting up, and are typically poorly furnished. In fact, if you stay at one of these hotels, you can expect little more than a light, an air conditioner, and an alarm clock inside your capsule, with some even going so far as to provide a TV, power outlet, and radio if you pay a little extra. Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, these hotels first gained popularity as a cheap place to stay while in a foreign city, and thus were often frequented by working men looking for a good night's sleep. However, as time passed, foreigners began to flock to these hotels, thus raising the prices of them to the point that most are just as if not more expensive than their hostel and hotel counterparts. And while these increased prices may seem like a little bit of a turnoff, most capsule hotels now offer other amenities outside of your pod, with these including anything from basics such as bathrooms and vending machines to more luxury offerings such as baths, saunas, massage parlors, arcades, restaurants, and of all things, manga libraries. As a result, we suggest staying at one of these incredible hotels if you're looking for a one-of-a-kind experience. Number 4. Pachinko parlors. Be it Las Vegas, Atlantic City, Reno, or Monte Carlo, many Westerners are accustomed to fan favorites such as poker, blackjack, roulette, and slots when they go to a casino. And while these games are certainly available in Japan, the country has an obsession with a gambling game that is almost irrelevant in the West. Known as Pachinko, this is a game in which a player first buys a number of tiny silver balls that are about the size of a BB gun pellet. Then they use a lever to shoot them into a pinball-like machine, where most will aimlessly fall to the bottom. However, if you're lucky and press down the lever with just the right amount of force, you will land one of the balls onto a center slot that triggers the jackpot, causing thousands of pachinko balls to fall into a bucket below you. It's these balls that can then be redeemed for cash. And while this game may seem simple enough, a number of adjustments have been made over the years to make it extremely addicting. For example, most machines are now electronically based and play extremely loud music and are blaringly bright in order to suck you into the mystique of the machine. Many will often be much more complicated than machines of years past, giving the player opportunities to enter mini-games and win quantities of balls that would have normally been unheard of. There's also the added facet of the machine's probability of producing a profit, as they tend to go through winning streaks in waves, with the player being able to track these waves by looking at the machine's stats. As a result, when both its addictiveness and the strategy behind Pachinko are put together, it becomes clear why it has become so popular across the country. Number 3. Crazy game shows. Be it Family Feud, Jeopardy, Dragon's Den, or Dancing with the Stars, there are multiple popular game shows that have captured the hearts of audiences across the West. However, in Japan, they prefer game shows with a little more flavor, with many ranging from a little weird to outright crazy. For example, while no longer airing new episodes, for years one of the most popular game shows in Japan was Takeshi's Castle. First aired in 1986 and running well into the 2000s, this was a game show where more than 100 contestants had to endure several physical challenges in order to storm a fortress. Now, the show was made to be really wacky because not only did most of the challenges involve lots of mud and water, but because contestants were also required to wear ridiculous costumes while having things thrown at them by people at the sides. Yet despite this absurdness, Takeshi's Castle became an international phenomenon, with it being aired in countries around the globe. However, there have been some more recent game shows that far outdo Takeshi's Castle in terms of craziness, and perhaps the greatest example of this is the show Slippery Stairs. That's because in this game show, contestants are dressed completely in lycra and made to race each other up a flight of stairs. However, the stairs are oiled down at strategic points, causing them all to slip and fall into each other. As a result, it's only after many attempts that one finally makes it to the top to claim their well-deserved prize. Yet perhaps the weirdest show of them all is Candy or Not Candy. That's because in this show, contestants must choose which of 3 items is a piece of chocolate, with all the objects being made to look like ordinary household items. Now, if they're correct, they will simply be eating a lot of chocolate. However, if they're wrong, they will often be biting into anything from a dirty shoe to an old towel, making for some absolutely crazy content. Therefore, if you're looking for some strange entertainment that's sure to have you in stitches, then you may want to tune in to one of Japan's strange yet spectacular game shows. Number 2. Host and Hostess Clubs. To an extent, we all like attention, and be it chatting with friends, phoning up a relative, or being complimented by a coworker. It's a simple fact that everyone likes to get noticed from time to time. However, in Japan, there exists a number of establishments known as host and hostess clubs that bring this to a whole new level. In essence, these clubs are filled with entertainers who are tasked with making their customers feel loved without actually doing any sexual favors or entering a romantic relationship. Now, for an experience at such a host club starts at the front door, where the first-time customers are allowed entry for the equivalent of about $20 to $60 for 2 hours. From there, they will be seated and generally have every host or hostess visit their table, with each essentially being a different character. As such, not only will they often have names borrowed from mythology or pop culture, but they will also typically have very different personality traits, with these ranging from outgoing and witty to intellectual and reserved. Then, once this process is completed, the customer will choose which host they would like to permanently see at the club. After this decision, the rates often inflate to $200 to $600 an hour. And at this point, the customer typically begins to gain the host's attention by buying them drinks throughout the night, with them often competing with other customers to buy the most expensive bottle possible in order to attract the host's attention. Now, as you can imagine, these clubs are often quite problematic, as they're typically frequented by lonely people who are willing to pay top dollar for what is essentially fake companionship, and generally involve a lot of alcohol consumption. They also sometimes come in more lewd varieties in the red light districts of some cities, giving them a rather rough reputation among locals. To top this off, the industry is extremely cutthroat, and hosts and hostesses work on commission, and typically cannot make a living wage unless they receive a lot of paying customers. As such, while this industry may be thriving, it certainly is rather toxic for most of those involved. Number 1. The Hikomori Hermits. While we hate to end this video on a sad note, the phenomenon of becoming a Hikomori Hermit has unfortunately become increasingly popular in Japan in recent years. In essence, it's the practice of completely shutting off oneself from society, and often consists of staying alone in one's apartment and playing video games, and watching television alone for every waking moment of every day. Composed of at least 500,000 people according to official census records, and likely including significantly more, these modern-day hermits, which are mostly composed of young men in their 20s or 30s, are referred to as the missing million in Japan due to their near-complete absence from society. And while they exist to an extent in other countries, Japan is especially susceptible to this phenomenon, due to the fact that it's home to rigid social norms, high expectations from parents, and a culture of shame, leading many to feel inadequate if they cannot be what society considers to be normal. And although this phenomenon has received increased attention in recent years, it is certainly one of the more unfortunate oddities that have come as a result of Japanese culture. Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.